Okay, hello everybody. We are both me and Pete, and we will talk about encryption. Pete, please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Przemyk. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are. My name is Pete Smith. I'm the VP of Sales here, and it's a real pleasure to welcome you today. We've got some interesting things to talk to you about. Very much encryption focused, as Przemyk said, but we've got some interesting things to tell you. And thanks very much for taking the time to join us today. So it's a pleasure to see you. So why don't I kick off and I'll just run through the agenda. By the way, just to let you know, we are recording it. I know Przemyk mentioned it at the start, so if you need to send this to a colleague afterwards who couldn't make it, then we'll send you the link. So what's really happening in the market? We're going to talk a little bit about some trends for next year, some of which are beginning now, and in particular, there's been definitely a lot more raised interest in how to secure data from the very beginning, whilst it's in transit, and this is becoming a little bit more important. And also, we'll talk a little bit more about how we can actually stop breaches from the very beginning. What's happening with user activity and logins? How can we talk about that? Also, a lot of companies are now talking about encryption a little more because we've seen, just in simple areas such as double sign-on for banking and so on, and that being enforced, and it's becoming an ever-moving feast that we're now having to look at. So we're going to look at really why that's becoming a major part next year. We'll also look at some customer use cases. So this might even ring a bell with some of you and think, yep, this looks like my environment. And then we'll go into some detail about our own particular solution. And then at the end, we'll have some questions and a close. And we've got some fun things and some nice things organised for the end. But certainly, really, what we're looking to do in terms of next year, and it's quite interesting. Let's look at some of the things that are really affecting us now and also going to be going into next year. And AI is a big question mark, and really depends on who you talk to as to what the opinion is. When I speak to people, quite often they say, "Can we trust it? We want to use it, but can we trust it?" The first thing we've noticed actually is this year, and it looks like there's going to be quite an explosion into next year, is the increase in companies who are actually adopting AI and building systems and products and solutions around that, and people wanting to do it. Now, as I say at the beginning, the big issue is can we trust it? So now what's beginning to happen is, and certainly what we think we'll see next year, is certainly some sort of trust risk security management around AI, a lot more tools to manage AI, and particularly yardsticks in terms of performance and how does this compare against hybrid systems and our own in-house systems. How does this actually work? So I think we're going to see a little bit more in that area. That's for sure. This particular area I quite like. So it's quite interesting. Somebody mentioned this to me the other day actually about digital immune systems, and really the goal here is for you as a provider, as a company that's actually giving services both internally and externally, to have greater uptime. So how can you make sure that you've got greater uptime for your users? And this could involve some pretty strenuous testing, and this could actually reduce downtime and also involve a lot of automation in terms of continually testing systems. So looks like we're going to see quite a bit of that to come too. Compliance automation as well. Compliance is probably one of the biggest headaches. Somebody the other day referred it to me as it's about as difficult as a tax return, and just as complex. So compliance is something that we have to live with, and there's going to be a lot more increased pressures on compliance. I mean, just looking recently at some of the fines that have been issued, and compliance organisations now seem to have teeth. I mean, DD Global, $1.2 billion fine for data violations and data protection violations. Amazon was 277 million. Instagram, 400 million. WhatsApp, 267 million. And Google, I mean, the list goes on, and these are big names. And it's really crippling for a lot of companies to have the fines and to not be compliant. So one of the areas that is certainly predicted to grow next year is in terms of automation for compliance, making it easier, making sure that you do pass the audits and that your company and particular departments are actually compliant. And this is particularly key, I think, for with the increase in data and also the fact that we have to store more data, we have to archive more data, and data has to be more available to us because of regulations. So with that, it also seems to be hand in hand with the fact that you've got a lot of cyber automation happening here, both with AI and also with compliance. So we're certainly going to see a lot more of the trends of companies leading towards that, certainly by the end of the year, if not already in the mid-year. And cloud adoption. And again, I think cloud is one of those subjects that, again, you depend who you talk to. Some people love it, some people don't, some people fully embraced it. But this year has been an interesting trend, which is going to certainly carry on into next year. A lot more people are turning to cloud and hybrid cloud. And the main pressure from a number of people that were surveyed, I saw a survey only 2 weeks ago about cloud adoption. And the number one reason for people wanting to adopt more cloud within their infrastructure and spread the risk was really from a cost point of view. That was pushing it more than anything else. Now, what's also interesting is cloud providers seem to have wanted to stick to their core business. So what they've wanted to do is make sure that they provide the best possible service that they can. So around that, what's also been predicted to happen next year is the fact that there's a lot of cloud service providers, so a lot of add-ons, people adding a lot of services around cloud. So it makes us feel as if it's our own environment. And this year we've seen quite a leap in that particular area, but there's looking to be possibly an explosion in that area as cloud seems to go even further, and the adoption of cloud seems to run further. A lot of providers, they want to really try and capture the market and also make sure that they can retain their clients. That's also been pretty key to them. There was a survey about the cloud providers and what did they want to do most of all. They wanted to stick to core business, make sure that their uptime was there all the time, but also expand their services and also make sure they had some retention, really strong retention as well. And then it comes to Wi-Fi. Now, obviously, there's been a huge adoption of working from home since COVID. It's pretty much the norm now that quite a lot of us work remotely or hybrid. Przemyslaw and myself, we're both remote. I'm in the UK, Przemyk's in Poland, and we just work together remotely, and that's pretty common throughout a lot of industries. But there seems to be certainly a prediction that there's going to be a lot more adoption of Wi-Fi, but not just the adoption, but really to looking to get a lot more improvements and flexibility and security of Wi-Fi. So one statistic I found the other day, which I thought was fairly interesting, was by 2025, 60% of firms are predicted to use not just one, but multiple Wi-Fi. So what we're now looking at is what's the next generation of Wi-Fi, what sort of technology is going to be coming out and how is that going to be used. Collaboration, and very much collaboration I think was a really interesting topic, because whenever we talk to clients, they say, one of the first questions we always ask is, do you have to do a lot of collaboration? So yeah, we do, but we want to make sure that it's secure collaboration. We want to make sure that if we're transferring data, it's got to be safe. If I'm transferring information, and particularly with government clients, we need to make sure this is safe. And these days, because there's so many people now working from home, there's a strong emphasis on having to access multiple systems, and each one might have a different login. We might forget, there might be some problems there. So in terms of collaboration, in fact, a recent poll in one of the newspapers that I read a couple of months back was that organizations were absolutely crying out for an effective way to stop data when they're actually accessing different systems, and make sure that they could relieve some of the frustration that they have in this particular area. And again, we might be dealing with some systems which we can't change, particularly in government areas. You cannot change certain things and you have to log into certain systems. So how can we actually make that a little bit more secure? So I just wanted to touch a little bit on some of the key areas that we're really now seeing in terms of security and some of the headlines which keeps coming back. And of course, ransomware. I mean, this is interesting because ransomware actually dropped during COVID, dropped by 50% during COVID, but now it's back. Now it's increased again. And one figure we found recently, which I found absolutely staggering, was to think that by 2025, the cost to businesses and organizations is going to be around about $10 trillion, which is a frightening number. So in terms of ransomware, one of the things we need to be aware of is where can we actually stop this from happening in real time? And do we need to start looking at the access of information as well? Compliance, we've actually touched on this, but one of the interesting things about compliance, and certainly GDPR, SOX, ISO, is that the regulations are now spreading. Companies are now having to dedicate a lot of resources to this to make sure they are compliant. The fines are getting bigger. But again, how can we make sure that we are compliant and we do tick the box? And is there an easier way of doing some things and some quick fixes to stop us actually getting breaches? And then malicious insiders, and this doesn't seem to be going away. It stopped quite a bit during COVID, as we all saw, because we were all working from home. But now there's been quite a huge hike of malicious insiders, and it's a very, very difficult area to actually combat. If we could perhaps just go to the next slide for a second, I want to delve in a little bit more detail, really around really what's happening. Actually, we just go one forward. Shemik, I've gone one back. Hang on. But yeah, just to really talk about sort of insider threats, just for the moment, because one of the areas, it's actually the most difficult thing to stop. It's the most difficult thing to find, and it's the most difficult thing to actually trace. When asked companies, where did it actually happen? How did it actually happen? Because the effects can be absolutely devastating. And it's all really based around trust initially. If somebody comes into your office and they start working for you, you give them a token key, or you give them some way to log in, or you let them onto the network, and immediately they've got the crown jewels. So it's very much based on employee trust. And what's generally happening is with insider threats, they tend to happen in three particular areas. It could be negligence. The majority of them, actually, believe it or not, are actually malicious, or it could just be compromised systems, all of which can be quite difficult to actually trace and protect against. But we're going to talk about this a little bit later, and we'll really sort of show you some easy ways of actually handling this and making sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen so often, and really try and put a stop to it completely as well. So, if we look at, really what's happening in terms of the security environment generally, what's happening, one of the pressures I know, and everybody talks about this, is the fact that we have got huge rising costs. We all know about this. We're feeling this personally, but we're also feeling this as organizations as well. And, we've got increased costs for wages. Employees are asking for more money as well, and quite rightly too. So this is actually putting people into a situation where they're now looking at, okay, we need to take a more layered approach because our network isn't working. We can't invest any more in that, but what we need to do is we need to take a more layered, or I hate to use this word again, it's been very, very much used over the years, as holistic approach, but it seems to be coming back again. If you have systems and things in place which are working, then don't change it. If it ain't broke, then don't change it, is always the old adage. But people seem to want more from vendors these days as well, because we're spending a lot of money on cybersecurity. And some people feel, what, am I getting value for money? There must be better ways of doing this. Now, you can't always rip everything out and start again. So maybe you need to take a little bit of a layered approach and just add some best of breed to your portfolio. And that should actually help you, because talking to a lot of clients recently, they found, do you know what, we find gaps in our systems, and very often it's very difficult to account for this, so we have to lock things down quite a bit. So the rising cost is definitely pushing us into a particular direction, and again, the remote and hybrid working, there's pressure on that because that again could have an effect on cost. If maybe you've reduced the size of your office, then remote working is probably going to be a cheaper option for certain employees. And since COVID, as we know, that's really accelerated it. And just one other point I wanted to mention is the fact that, particularly in Europe, having had Brexit as well, that's also changed supply chain too. So people are now working with different suppliers, so that the whole way that we're now actually talking to one another is quite different. And again, it comes back to cloud. Can we get the same or a more secure environment by using cloud or hybrid cloud than we can? So can we close some of our current infrastructure down, which may be quite old? So there's definitely an argument for doing that. And again, the unified communications, and we're seeing a lot more in terms of people having to use different mediums. We have to use, for instance, if we're doing the webinar today, we're using one particular medium, but it could be Zoom, it could be GoToMeeting, it could be something else, it could be a combination of VoIP, all sorts of things, and we're having to use this all the time, and that produces some particular gaps. So if we move on to the next slide, please, Shamik. So normally, if I'm doing this in front of a bunch of folks, I always say, "Where is this?" and I give a prize for the first person to name that particular place. And so if you do know where it is, please put it in the chat box, and we'll find a prize for you. Yeah, people seem for a while there, people went back to, do you know what? We're just going to lock everything down. We're going to build a fortress. We're going to have immense firewalls. We're going to be really careful about what comes in and what goes out, and just lock everything down and just create that kind of fortress around our data. But of course, the problem with that is it's not business as usual. It makes it frustrating for us to actually continue business and really continue working. So what should we do? Should we be a bit more flexible, and shall we have an open policy? Which takes me onto the next slide, really. Yeah, we can have an open policy, but the problems with having such open policies are that you can be hacked. And to think that we have people sitting outside offices where you can remotely put a light bulb on, they've got your IP address, they've got your intellectual property, and they can just get onto your network. I mean, the fact that you can program a kettle is great, but do you really want to give away your own particular IP address? It's pretty dangerous stuff, and those things are really vulnerable. There's a lot of vulnerabilities within there. They've been tested, and it seems like a great idea, but there is a risk. If it's a little bit like somebody said to me once, it's like having a great burglar alarm, but not actually closing your kitchen window. So cloud security, just to go back to cloud, just for 1 second, because I think there's some interesting statistics here, really, in terms of cloud deployment, and certainly over the last 18 months, there's been a nearly 50% increase in people taking cloud, and particularly hybrid cloud. That seems to be the most popular area. But again, that's got to be secured. How do we secure both on-prem, and how do we secure hybrid cloud and make sure that we're going to be fully compliant? And another good question. And also, over the last 18 months, 65% of the users that were actually surveyed did actually have concerns that they might be losing data over this period of time. So if we are going to be using cloud, just a little bit concerned that we might actually be using it. So how can we lock that down and make sure that doesn't happen? And again, 70%, interesting statistics, 70% of the people that actually were using cloud over the last 18 months on this particular survey. So there was around about a 7% increase on people actually trying to access their systems, which is a little bit concerning, really. But so if you move on to the next slide, please, Shamik. Just go on to, so how is my data at risk? So what's really, so we've talked a little bit here about sort of environment. Now let's sort of hone things down a little bit here, and let's really talk about really how things have changed. Well, I think it's, we all know. So things have changed quite considerably, and the way that we're actually accessing information has changed. We might be in the airport and we might need to access something from our phones. So we're going to use the airport Wi-Fi, that particular area. How we share data, there's a huge pressure on how we're actually sharing data. And this also comes from us being mobile. We're now actually moving again. We're not locked down from COVID anymore. But the way that we actually transmit data is changing as well. And it seems to be an evolving and quite dynamic environment as well. And that's something that we need to consider moving forward, is how do we protect our data as this actually happens? And really, do we need to take a more data-centric approach to thinking, okay, data comes first, let's look at everything else, and everything else comes down from there. And I'm sure many of you who have had this problem already, that unstructured data is possibly some of the most vulnerable data, and that's where people like to attack. Certainly from a hacker's point of view, they like to actually attack that particular area and do that most. And as I said, as I mentioned earlier, that some of the traditional defenses of having the fortress or traditional products which are sitting in there, they're just not really up to the mark anymore. And as we mentioned from at the beginning with Google and Instagram and so on, having these huge fines, and I know that particular finance institutions can end up having breaches in places, and it can be absolutely devastating. So and the existing infrastructure, which should have helped, doesn't. So how can we actually help in that particular area, and how can we actually make sure that sort of thing doesn't happen? So if we go to the next slide, please. So what are some of the sort of common factors that we've got really in terms of that's affecting us? Where are the issues actually coming? Well, bring your own device. That's common. I come into an office, I bring my phone, I bring a different laptop. It's maybe not a company one, or a contractor comes in, and we're accessing the network. Interconnectivity as well, in terms of how many different systems are we actually logging on and off to, and did we not maybe not log off from that particular system that we're still in but didn't realize, and have we left a key somewhere? Increases in data, I think, is also pretty important. The average, I think, ranges from between 31 and 35% in terms of growth of data, and that's something that's been consistent over the last 12 years. Cloud we've talked about, but also in terms of insecure devices, how can we actually track them? How can is there going to be an insecure device? Is there any way of making sure that if the device is not secure, it's just not used, and we don't use it as access, or we need to use something or a method that's going to make sure that it is actually secure? And then, of course, there's inherent applications which do have their own system vulnerabilities. So we may well be running a system which could have been built some time ago, which at the time was great, but now will probably have some gaps in it. There was a particular manufacturer of washing machines and electrical equipment, and everything was very programmable and very good, and they'd used the same system for years, but unfortunately it was completely hackable, and it allowed people into their own Wi-Fi networks. And then there's hacker motivation, and that changes from time to time. We used to call them the 3 R's, which is sort of reward, retaliation, and reputation. And right now, it's definitely hacker motivation is reward. And I think probably the scariest thing for me is the fact that you've got ransomware as a service, so anyone can download tools and start going out there and hacking, which is kind of crazy. And I think probably the final point here, really, in terms of the attacks, they're definitely getting smarter. So, which means that we have to become smarter, and we need to find ways of actually securing things and making sure that maybe we do things from the very beginning, which is really what we talked about at the very start of this, is the fact that everything does start with encryption. So maybe to combat all these things, we can actually start from the very beginning and making sure that everything is actually secure from the very start when people log on. So if you move to the next slide, please. So yeah, just a little bit about encryption, really, which I thought was quite interesting, and because encryption's been with us for a little while. During the Second World War, the Allies actually used Navajo as a language to actually communicate back and forth, because it was pretty much indecipherable, and it just couldn't be broken. And then, of course, the Germans actually made the Enigma machine, so the first kind of bit of encryption we ever had, certainly over sort of vaporware and radio and wireless and so on, was actually Navajo and also the Enigma machine. But it's been with us ever since. But luckily, things have actually moved on quite a bit since then. But I just thought I'd show you that just out of interest. I thought it was quite interesting to see how things have actually developed since then. So we go to the next slide, please. So yeah, really, why is encryption? This is really why we're here today. Just really talk about encryption, because it's a very simple solution. It's a very dynamic solution, as you're going to see in just a moment. But what do we want to do? I mean, the goal for us really is to make sure that every organization really is 100% secure when they're collaborating. That's absolutely the key, and really make it just a much better user experience and a more confident user experience, really. And really, we need to make sure that the content's where it should be, it's going to the person that it should go, and stop any of these accidental leaks. And how can we do that? And maybe we need to set up some information barriers. Maybe I want to send something to one person, and we don't want them to another person doesn't want to necessarily see that. We want to make sure that one person gets a file and the other one doesn't. There was a case earlier this year from a particular a large media company, and one image was leaked. And because this image was leaked, another toy manufacturer got hold of this image and was able to build a toy several months earlier and get a leap on the market. And that was quite devastating. It was all from just one image, and they still haven't counted the cost of what that's meant to the business. So we might want to make sure that one team can see one thing, then one person can see part of a message, one person can see something and somebody else can't. So do we want to set these kind of barriers up as well? And the other thing, I think, one of the sort of final points really is that it's quite often a single point of failure that can happen. If you're, by the way, if you are an IT director, IT manager, security manager, you have my complete respect, because it's a tricky job. You've got to secure your environment, and you've got to do so with a limited number of tools and within a particular budget, and it's an ever-changing feast. So it's a really tough job. It really is. So yeah, I think you should all be paid a lot more as a result. But yeah, it is. It's tough, and it's definitely getting considerably tougher as well. But really what we want to do is make sure that we can mitigate some of these particular areas, and also enforce some policies, help you to enforce and make sure that you are compliant. And we're going to talk a little bit of that in just a second. So I think if we just go to, I think what will be probably one of my last slides. So yeah, so just some areas to consider. I'm sure you think about this, but who's actually accessing your system? Is there a way of stopping people from accessing your systems and making sure that only the right people can see the data that you're downloading and transferring? Who are these people that are accessing? As we said, 70% unauthorized attacks on cloud, in terms of trying to log on. Can we stop that? If they're trying to log on, how do we make sure they don't see what we're actually sending back and forth? Is there some way of seeing this and saying, oh, actually, do you know what? These people are behaving strangely. I don't know who they are. We need to put something in place to stop this from happening, because that's violating our security principles. Are people finding ways around it? I can guarantee that there's always somebody that'll find a way around. Oh, I don't want to go through all these hoops. I just want that information. Well, that's a risk to us, and we need to stop that, because you're breaching a policy. So can we find a way where we can be compliant, help with our compliance, and also make sure that the login policies are actually going to be used properly? And also, where is the access being gained? Does it matter where the access is being gained from? If we have a great solution in place to stop these things from happening, does it really matter? Well, it might not, and maybe we can show you some way of actually doing that. Do we need another layer of security? This is another thing. What have we got in place at the moment? Do we just need to add to it? A nice simple solution that will add to it. We don't want to rewrite the book. Do we need to start from scratch? But is there a nice, easier way of doing that? And one CEO said to me, "Your solution looks great, Pete, but is my IP being fully protected?" Well, that's a great question. That's a great question that you need to ask yourself. With what we have in place at the moment, are we being fully protected? So I think that's one more slide for me, I think, Shemik, and I think that we'll soon be going. So we're going to be moving on to the product in just a moment. But yeah, really, what does encryption do for help? That's really what we're talking about, is how we can put a simple solution in at the very beginning, looking at what's happening in the market, looking at what's going to possibly happen next year. How can we make sure we actually protect our threats and make sure that we can protect our data from the very beginning? How can we also make sure that you do pass your compliant audits, and you're going to get the ticks in the box? Yes, we have a proper protocol when people log in. We make sure that everything's encrypted, that file's in, no one else can see it, and everything's okay. And we're 100% happy that that's going to be the case. And of course, the benefits really from an IT perspective is you're not spending so much time having to find out where breaches are, monitor your systems, and also make sure that the breaches aren't actually happening. Okay, next slide, please. So yeah, this is our mission statement. This is my final slide, you'll be pleased to hear, because I'm going to hand over to Przemyslaw in just a second. But yeah, there's a pretty bold statement there, isn't it? We want to make sure that everyone's data is protected by encryption and guarantee total privacy of communications, and really protection. It's a bold statement, but if you speak to our CEO, Sebastian, and he's very passionate about this, and in fact, we all are throughout the company. It's what we want to do, and we feel very confident that we can actually do this for you. Shemik's going to show you just how we do that, but we want to make sure that everybody has total security of what they're actually transferring in terms of data in real time, and making sure that your information and your data is absolutely secure over any particular platform. So my half hour is now up. I'm going to hand over to you now, Shemik. So thank you very much, and thank you very much for listening, everyone.
Thank you, Pete. So we will go to show you Cypherdog email encryption, but you must know that Cypherdog email encryption is not only for emails, because using Cypherdog email encryption, you can encrypt any text or any file and use any media you want to transfer it. But we support in special way Gmail and Outlook, but you can use every native client or every web client, or use other way for communication. I will show it. So I think that at the beginning it's better to go to Cypherdog, because after that it will be easier to understand version and other things. So start. When you download Cypherdog, for example, single user version, you should install it on the computer, because this is native application. We should install it to create pair of keys, public and private, and private key is always on user's device, or in business version on company's server. We as Cypherdog, we have an access to private key. So you can check this icon here. This is Paul, Docs Paul, like Cypherdog. And if you click right button, oh, so something happened. Murphy's Law. One moment. So we should wait for a minute. I will open Cypherdog once more time. I don't know what happened, because I checked it a few minutes ago. I think, Pete, could you for a moment talk about some use cases? I will check what happened and we'll back, okay?
important that actually they can encrypt documents. One of the areas that you will find actually with Cypherdog is the fact that if I'm waiting for a bit of information, a plan or a document, and I recently bought a house and I needed some documents from my lawyer, and they used a particular encryption which was quite heavy and difficult to use. And I need to log on and get a license and so on. With ourselves, it's not the case. It's only actually the person sending the device or sending the information that actually needs to have the license. And so it's very good to actually do it in that way. And one of the things you can actually do, and we actually have global law firms who actually use our particular solution. And what they've done is they've created an information barrier. So one person might be working with the company on or with the clients on one particular area, and one might be in another country working with that client, but the two never meet, they never speak, and they can never see the information that one is sending to another. So certainly in that particular area, it's really important. One particular client we've also been talking is a very large media client, and they have multiple users spread around everywhere, and most of their workforce now is remote, and they have to have a good login to particular systems. They've had many breaches. So for them to be able to make sure that they can actually send media across, which is quite important from one place to another, they can actually use that quite well. Now, the other thing that we're also going to mention is also in terms of the scalability. You can start very small with Cypherdog email encryption. You could be one or two users. You could just be a couple of users, and then you can actually build that up. You might want to use it if you're using say within supply chains. Also pretty important. If you want to make sure that the information that you're sending to your suppliers is absolutely 100% confidential. You can make sure that absolutely happens, particularly if it's a new supplier and you're not absolutely certain, and you just want to make sure that the right person gets the information rather than somebody else. So just thought I'd check back with you, Przemyslaw, to see how we're getting on, or should we just maybe go through the rest of the slides? Or
I think it's okay now. Whole sidebar was have a problem, but now it's okay. So it's
great,
working. So
no problem.
Murphy's law, yes, because I work with Cypher document encryption during whole last 2 weeks, yes, or more. But okay. So
Great,
now you can find here our application. After installation, I should create automatically public and private key, and you can find the short menu you can have here. The main function is backup of private key, because we have no copy as Cypherdog private keys. You should make in single user version this backup of private key by yourself, because if something happened with your notebook, with your disk drive, we don't help you if you ask us about recovery of private key, because we haven't access to them. And here we have two main functions. It means encrypt file and text, and decrypting file and text. I will show it how it works, but I opened Gmail, and you can see how it works using plugin, because solution has two parts. One part is application, you can see here, and the second part is plugin. You can check it in the corner here, which you can download from Chrome extension page. And what I can do, before sending any email, I should put address. I will put my second mailbox, company's mailbox. I could title and test of webinar. I can write text, and after that select a part of whole text, right click and wait few seconds, and you can see, or milliseconds, you can see that here we have encrypted message to other people, and this message I can send using Gmail. So I will send it. I send this email, I send it to Thunderbird, for example, and I open Thunderbird here in the second window. I can show you that I have this email. Here you are. And you can see that this is ciphertext, but we don't support Thunderbird as a native client. But what we can do, we can select this text, copy it to clipboard, use decrypt text, paste, and decrypt, and you can see that this is decrypted text. But if you use Gmail on the second side, it means that you can read it using this magic button. It means that you can click in Gmail only one button and you have decrypted text. So it means that you can use text encryption and decryption for using any media. You can imagine such kind of situation that you can encrypt credentials for company, but for other user, but you should put always receiver. You can imagine that you can put credential for any system and distribute it through Slack because I can encrypt. It was copied to clipboard. I can use at this moment, for example, Slack, and I can send it to myself. Yes, here, and only me using Cypherdog account can decrypt and nobody else. I can use different media, including WhatsApp, Telegram, Signal, what you want, because it will work. But we have plugins to Gmail and whole family. It means Google Suite and Google Workplace, and we have plugins to Outlook. Outlook should operate with Exchange, Microsoft Exchange Server, or Microsoft 365 or Outlook 365 because add-ins are working only situation when you use these platforms, because in other way you should do it encryption manually. What about attachments? It's easy because we can click right button, encrypt file, and you can give enter information about receiver. Use this plus and select files from different localization. For example, maybe it could be this file, and set destination folder. It could be documents, Zoom, what we want, and please uh, click OK, and file will be encrypted. And this file you can find in this folder, and after that attach to, for example, email. Every you can use it by every web client or a native application and send it. But you can use, for example, WeTransfer to, you can use Google Drive, Dropbox, what you want, because we support in special way emails. But Cypherdog email encryption is platform for encryption of everything you want, we can say. So decryption, it is possible that you can download receive email, after that download encrypted attachment and use this magic window for decryption of files. So you should click which folder and select file and decrypt them, and in destination folder will be decrypted file. You probably will ask me how it's possible that we talk always on our web pages about asymmetric encryption, but frankly speaking, we can prepare one ciphertext or why one file, one attachment for many users. Because at the beginning of every encryption process, we create symmetric key, and this symmetric key we encrypt for every receiver we enter in address line using asymmetric public key of receiver, and we create blocks in the header of data, and on the other side the recipient try to decrypt every block using private key to receive symmetric key to decrypt the rest of file or block of data. So it's very interesting that you can send one attachment to many recipients, but only recipients from the list can in real decrypt files. So we can back to presentation. So we can say that we can use Cypherdog to prevent economic espionage. But you should know that economic espionage is not only IP, is not only technology R&D, but the basic way for stealing important data of company is stealing offers, agreements, list of customers, and so on. We prevent invoice hacking because we can be sure that nobody can change attachment and change, for example, account number in invoice or pro forma invoice. And we have the second generation of ransomware with double extortion. This is a big problem for many companies because backup is not enough at this moment to prevent ransomware. So we should encrypt data before stealing them by cyber criminals. Prevent phishing. We give you a possibility for secure and confidential communication. There is a lot of regulation, including NIS2, which you probably know about decision of European Parliament from yesterday. There is a GDPR, DORA, and other policies in different countries, different regions, on different continents, and they are very similar. And what you are giving your Cypherdog? Individual right to be anonymous. Yes, it's very important in current times because the big companies and governments would like to know everything about us, about our businesses, about our money. So it's good to protect themselves. What about features of our software? Because I showed you Cypherdog email encryption, we have two additional products. It means Cypherdog file exchange and storage and Cypherdog Messenger. Cypherdog file exchange and storage is similar to WhatsApp desktop version, but secure because we use the same cryptographic methods like in Cypherdog email encryption. And we have the Cypherdog Messenger, which allows you chatting with other people using mobile application with the same basis of cryptography we have in Cypherdog email encryption. And the most important thing about our new product is Cypherdog email encryption, which allows you to encrypt and decrypt any text or any media which you can send using any media, but we support in special way Gmail, Google Suite, Google Workplace, and Outlook, which operate with Exchange, but we can use any web client or any native client. We have few versions of Cypherdog. If you download single user version, it will be works for 14 days starting after registration. And after 14 days, this application will go to the free mode. It means that you can decrypt any file or any text you received, and it is for free. And in single user version, the main difference to business version is that in single user version, one license means one user, and user is administration of their account, so can make backup of private key. In business version, it's a little different. In business version, one license is for many users, and there is admin console. And you can, as an IT administrator, you can manage users and install application automatically from command line. What else? All private keys of employees are stored on company server in Vault. And there is an additional thing that you can manage your license. There is a proxy server which allows you to make communication between endpoints and Vault. But from the user's point of view, it looks the same. So it is the same application, the same client application. Why Cypherdog? We are independent from email provider because we can support every email, and you can use it not only for internal communication, but especially for external communication. Because if you send an email, you don't know what happened and when this email is stored, because it's stored in open format on any server. Low entry level because you can send emails to everybody, encrypted emails, and on the other side can have free version for decryption. But if you see on cost of full version of single user, it is only $6 per month or 60 per year. So it's much cheaper than, for example, Google Workplace for enterprises when you have minimum 250 users for many thousands of dollars. What else? As I mentioned before, that Cypherdog email encryption is not only email encryption. This is whole platform for encryption text or files. So you can use any platform for communication, for sending ciphertext or encrypted files, including WeTransfer, Google Drive, Slack, what you can imagine. Our Cypherdog email application is working on Windows and Mac OS and for Linux too. And we have plugins to Chrome, to Edge, and Outlook. It means that you can make encryption and decryption only by one click. Yes, in case of other platforms, there will be a little more clicks, but it's secure. There is in our solution there is no third party, including email provider. It means that email provider has no access to your data, including us. It means solution provider, because there is a lot of tools for encryption, which from the biggest vendors. Yes, and the main problem is that they are using only symmetric encryption. It means that they are holding your keys for encryption. So in encryption, the most important thing is not algorithm, but who has access to your keys. So if you know about solution when you can send your encrypted message or encrypted file to anybody you want, it means that that keys are in hands of solution provider very often. So, or very often you heard about asymmetric encryption, but frankly speaking, there is a third party because vendor of application is making copy of private keys. The third problem is that many solutions are using third party for example, certification authority. In our case, there is no external certification authority. We sign a public key of user by own certificate of user. So it means that's totally different, because you can imagine, for example, ProtonMail a few years ago gave communication that ProtonMail stopped to trust to their certification authority, and they changed it. What else? We use Unix cryptographic methods because this is combination of symmetric and asymmetric encryption. We protect our private key in absolute way because this key is encrypted and stored in encrypted form. This is zero knowledge security model because we don't help anybody if somebody lose private key, because we have no copy of them. Because if we have copy, our information about our solution could be a bullshit. We don't collect any metadata and data we don't need in all of our solution. So we have 2 patents pending in US at this moment, and probably during next few months it will be real patents. So we have benchmarking to the most popular open technologies like SMIPE and PGP, and you can see the difference between us and SMIPE and PGP. The most important, for example, the most important differences to SMIME is this magic window, which allow you encrypt and decrypt every text you want. And SMIME is using external certification authority. And other thing is that there is a possibility to keystroke attack and having access to key. In PGP, we support Outlook, PGP not. The problem is with downloading, because somebody from trusted network of users of PGP can change public key of user. It is very dangerous. But the most important thing is that Cypherdog email encryption is easy to use and easy to installing on your computer, because you need as a user only knowledge of normal user of computer, like you can install it like antivirus and so on. We have another benchmarking to 25 services together. It means we base this table on information we received from different vendors, from white papers, from web pages, and we would like to share it with us, but this is for internal use because we don't know what is in real because this is based on official information. You can find some information about patents, yes, which we apply to in US and trademark of Cypherdog. During last 2 years, we received a few prizes, for example, from Computer Reseller News in Poland, from Business Center Club, and the last one, because this is not in this presentation, but we received a lot of reviews on Captera now in area of Cypherdog email encryption. I think that the very important thing are processes we can protect when we talk about encryption, because cybersecurity is based on processes in company and connected data we should protect. So we can say that in every company there is communication with external law firm and we should protect them. There is communication with external accounting firm, with HR agency, with external auditor, for example, day-by-day communication of board of directors and supervisory board, but maybe before meetings too, when you have some agreements, some papers to sign, it is good to protect such kind of communication. Sending offers of big value to customers. Yes, for me, a few years ago, it was about 9 years ago, I was a victim of economic espionage in real. This is fact, because I worked in this time for one of distributors in Central Eastern Europe, and we prepare tenders for tax offices. It was total 20 million euro, and during opening offers, our competitor, it means another distributor with another partner, has 16 prices lower 0.2%. It means that they know, because it's easier to win lotto than have such kind similar prices. Sending contracts, for example, invoices, offers to clients. And I show you this example, sending credentials to systems, apps, and services. For example, in our case, a Cypherdog case, whole developers team is using Cypherdog, especially for sending credentials to different servers, to different systems, to GitHub and Amazon services, for example, because it should be secured by different way. Remote workers communication. Very often you don't know which Wi-Fi network you connect, so you should protect this communication. Purchase process of qualified suppliers, R&D technology, whole healthcare sector because of GDPR and other things, transmission of license codes, transmission of large files, because you can use email, but you can use other method of communication, as I mentioned before. It could be we transfer Google Drive, because files are protected, yes, because they are encrypted and only owner of private key can decrypt file, not nobody else. Okay, what we can offer you? We offer you, as attendees of this special event, free license for everybody. I will send you a recording of the webinar probably today or tomorrow morning. In reply, if you ask me about free license of Cypherdog, I can send you. But you should remember that you can use Cypherdog email encryption for free always for 14 days and have all features you want. So what else? I would like to ask about review. At this moment, Captera has special action to everybody who give some reviews in gift card for Amazon or Starbucks. So if you click on this link, I will send you a link in email too. You can receive special gift from Captera, not for us. And what else? Today we started a special promotion with crypto space, because we are we launch own tokens in January, and in October Cypherdog token was launched on Bitmart, and we have special gift for everybody who would like to buy Cypherdog email encryption can receive tokens on bigger value than license. So I think That's all from my presentation. Sorry for troubles. So, but it is normal, I think. Yes, during presentation, whole sidebar hanged. So I must close a lot of tasks, and after that it works. I have few questions first from Kasia. Is email encryption working only with Gmail or Outlook? We can say that we support every email because we support in special way Gmail or Outlook because we can encrypt or decrypt using only one click. In other ways, we should copy ciphertext and paste it to magic window and click encrypt. It means that we have 3 clicks, not 1 click. Question from Isidore: does the recipient of message have to have a Cypherdog application installed on his computer to encrypt file message? To decrypt? Yes, must, because we are using real asymmetric encryption. When private key is real private, it means that its private key should be on device of user, not somewhere in the space, yes, in the cloud. Because if you hear situation that you can decrypt something using something as a web client or without installing anything, it means that private key is not private, or this solution is using only symmetric encryption. So, if you have any additional question, please ask. Pete, do you have something else?
No, I think we're there. I just really wanted to say thank you to Przemyslaw for that, showing us the solution, and really, hopefully, you've got something out of today, and you can actually reflect on something. As I say, we've got a very, very good solution here at Cypherdog, and obviously we're biased because we work for the company. But as you can see, nice simple solution, works really well, really easy, very competitive. And if you want to start combating how users are actually using their data and sending data back and forth, then it's a really good solution to be able to do that. And as we said, there's a 14-day trial, so please feel free to actually go on the website, download it, try it. You'll find it very, very easy to install, very easy to work, and you can actually have a very nice little solution there, and actually a nice layered solution to make sure that you're actually compliant, protecting your data in real time, and making sure that it's 100% secure, and within a very, very easy budget as well. So that's really all from me. I wanted to thank you all very much for your attention today, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you. And I'll
Thank
hand
you.
back to Przemyslaw. Thank
Thank
you very
you.
much.
We will have next meeting in 2 weeks. Please check our social media. We will inform you that we will prepare something special, and probably as I remember, on 13 December we'll have another webinar about encryption with you, Pete. So we invite you. All information you can find on our profile on LinkedIn or in other media, and we will send you an email with invitation too. So thank you. Have a nice day. Bye bye.
Take care.